You boys be quiet down there!
Hey, this is Mr. Jakes from Basement Brothers, and today, rather than playing old games on the PC88 and PC98 from companies like Falcom, instead we'll be taking a look at a brand new game from Falcom, Ys VIII, Nordics, released in Japan on September 28, 2023. I just finished it, so here's my short review. I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but if you're someone who really doesn't want to know anything about the game before you play it for yourself, then of course you really shouldn't be watching this video. Also, I'll be playing the PS5 version set to 1080p for those curious. Alright, so here we go. Ys X actually takes place after Ys II, when Adol is still 17, and on his way to Celceta so that Ys IV can happen. It's unusual for the Ys series to feature characters from the first two classic Ys games other than Dogi, but in Ys X, the two of them are joined by Dr. Flare, the man who saved Lilia in Ys II. He comments that since the land of Ys came down to the earth, everything in the world seems so new and exciting to him. He's spent his entire life stuck on a floating island in the sky, so being on a ship traveling the world now has got to be quite a culture shock when you think about it. The world of the Ys series is based loosely on the real world. There are equivalents of Europe, the Middle East, and of course the Roman Empire, and Ys X focuses on this world's equivalent of the Vikings, called the Normans. No surprise that the Ys series decided to hop on to the Viking bandwagon, since games based on Norse mythology have been all the rage since 2018. Anyway, the ship Adol is on is commandeered by pirates. Ooh, pirates. Viking pirates. I definitely gotta fight some of these guys. Adol, of course, won't let them take the ship without a fight, and spars with them, as well as their leader, the Viking princess. But there's a problem.
Are you friendly pirates?
Turns out, the ship Adol is aboard is a smuggler's ship, and these Vikings are the good guys. Whoops. So the ship's voyage has come to an early end, and Adol and his friends are stuck in Oberia Bay, the setting of Ys X. Here the Vikings are generally feared by the locals, but tolerated since they keep the bay secure. Adol, as you may have guessed, becomes closely tied to their princess named Karja. No, I mean that Adol and Karja become literally tied together by a magic rope, for reasons yet unexplained.
You know, this could be fun. Race you to the kitchen, my little tetherball.
You're on, rope-a-dope.
So the combat in Ys X features only two characters this time. The concept of having certain characters who are strong against certain types of enemies has been done away with almost completely, and though the game still occasionally calls out which character you should use from time to time, it doesn't really matter a lot whether you use Adol or Karja. In fact, why use just one of them when you can use both? Instead of a third character, Ys X has sort of a dual attack mode activated by holding R2. The characters will both attack at once, and while holding R2, you also get a whole separate set of skills you can assign to each of the face buttons, in addition to the ones you have assigned to the separate characters. The combat encourages blocking a lot more than in previous games, which may be bad news for you if you loved zipping around to dodge enemy attacks in the other ones. Ys X introduces the Revenge meter, which you fill up by blocking enemy attacks. This makes the next skill you unleash extra powerful, depending on how high you've built the meter up. You also gain a couple new abilities for traversing the stages, a grappling hook and a hoverboard. The hoverboard is primarily used for traveling over water.
Hey, McFly, you bojo! Don't burst don't work on water!
The hoverboard can also grind on rails. Hey, is this an Ys game or a Sonic the Hedgehog game? But actually, it's more like an Assassin's Creed game, because the biggest new addition here is a ship for Adol to travel about Oberia Bay. Now, I know there are plenty of games where you control a ship, other than Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, but a lot of Ys X seems almost directly inspired by that game. The ship battles feel pretty similar, at least until you start getting all sorts of cartoony magical weapons later in the game. You also have to board enemy ships in order to complete some of them. Ys X even has treasure maps, salvage to pick up, and forts you need to take out in order to reveal points of interest in the surrounding area. The fort battles are pretty blatantly copied from Assassin's Creed 4. You start out in the ship, taking out turrets, and once they're gone, you take the battle to the inside. I love the feeling of rushing into the forts to take out the enemies. The fast-paced music and hallways to run through between each area really sets the mood. These fort battles, by the way, are the closest equivalent of the village defense battles in Ys VIII and the knights in Ys IX. They can be replayed until you achieve an S rank in each one. In the ship, I never quite got the sense of freedom that I got from Assassin's Creed 4. You can't just jump overboard wherever you want. You can only get off at certain islands, some of which have optional stages to play through. Another small complaint I have is with the ship controls. In Assassin's Creed, right always turns the ship to starboard and left to port, regardless of which way the camera is facing. But in Ys X, the controls reverse at some point when the camera gets turned around toward the bow of the ship, which happens often during battle. This actually screws things up a lot when the ship suddenly starts turning the wrong way while you're being attacked. The issue might be exacerbated for me because I've played so much Assassin's Creed, but I really think Falcom made the wrong move here with these controls. When comparing it to other Ys games, however, Ys X reminds me a lot more of Ys VIII than it does 9. I think that's probably good news for most fans. Not only do you have a sunshiny island theme for most of the game, but you're also rescuing villagers scattered about the world in much the same way you rescue castaways in 8. Here some of the villagers have been turned into monsters and need to be changed back.
Now let's see who's really behind these bandages.
Dr. Najib!
You gradually upgrade your ship and fill it up with allies. In the cutscenes, at first Karja is really strict about who's allowed on board, but by the end, anyone and everyone is welcome. Kids? Okay. The rich merchant lady from abroad who doesn't want anything to do with the adventure? Sure, why not? The town drunk? Welcome aboard, sir. Please find a space to lay down somewhere on deck. Since you've got a ship in Ys X, the world has a much larger scale than any of the previous games. I was thinking it actually wasn't going to be that big, as the first 3 chapters of the game moved along at a breakneck pace, but it turns out Oberia Bay is huge, and things really slow down a lot by chapter 3 or 4, when you're finally allowed to roam freely and are given a ton of optional tasks to carry out. It might even be the longest Ys game yet. There's plenty to do, and you might not even get it all done before completing the story. The story, by the way, is pretty decent. I thought it dragged a bit toward the middle, but starts to become interesting toward the end, as is often the case. Since this game takes place so early in Adol's adventures, I gotta wonder though, whatever happened to Karja? She and Adol seem like such a great couple, but I guess Adol is kind of like James Bond. He has a different lady in almost every game. I feel like it would be weird to review a Falcom game without even mentioning the music, but there isn't a lot to say. If you've played any recent Falcom game, then you know what to expect. The quality is excellent, as always, and there are a few rocking tracks in the action stages, but a lot of modern Falcom music tends to sound pretty similar, and I can't say I found much of anything here particularly memorable. There's no new equivalent of Ys VIII's Sunshine Coastline, but I'm sure Falcom music fans will still enjoy some of the more epic tracks and the game's emotional main theme. Hey, I just finished the game and I swear, I'm not crying, you're crying. So overall, would I recommend Ys X? Sure, why not? It was pretty good. It still plays like an Ys game, while also taking a lot of ideas from a certain game from 10 years ago. But it would be silly to expect anything particularly new or innovative from a modern Ys game anyway. I think I like Ys X not quite as much as 8, but more than 9. So if that sounds alright to you, give it a shot. So that's my review, and if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel and check out some of my series PC88 and PC98 Paradise, where I often review games from Falcom's long and fascinating history. This has been Mr. Jakes from Basement Brothers, and I hope to see you back here again soon.